Assalamu alaikum and good morning to all. It's a Friday morning and Jummah Mubarak to everyone.
Alhamdulillah, we are still celebrating, and this time it's the birth of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, and it's been a wonderful time, and the holy month of Ramadan is fast approaching.
It is indeed. It's an important time to remember the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and the Imam of our time, peace be upon him. And this week the celebrations continue, alhamdulillah. Today the celebrations begin with Brother Mustafa Ali with our very important Holy Quran recitation with ayahs from Surah Imran.
Straight after that we have Brother Ibrahim Ansari on the couch, daily du'as as always with his beautiful recitation. And today is the du'a for the middle of Sha'ban.
We also have psychotherapist Brother Bilal Ali dropping by to discuss the psychology of prejudice. It's quite interesting.
That is quite interesting. Looking forward to that. So please do stay tuned. We're here to help. And today we have a lentil soup with life coach Fahima Muhammad and Sister Sana. And we're looking forward to that.
Lentil soup, that is preparation for Ramadan, isn't it?
Definitely.
We also have your fiqh questions and queries answered by our very own Sayyid Mohsin Shah, talking about women and women's rights. So this should be definitely informative.
For competition details, please stay tuned. Brother Mustafa Khatib.
The whole city of Karbala is home to tragedies, heartbreak, as well as treasures and wonders. Millions from around the world come to this sacred city with their prayers and tears. As well as being home to Imam Hussein Media Group, it's the home and resting place of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and his brother Abu Fadl Abbas alayhum as-salam. Imam Hussein sacrificed his life for the sake of truth and preservation of the religion and teachings of his grandfather Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Imam Baqir says, order our Shia to visit the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, since doing so increases sustenance, extends life, removes evil, and that visiting the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is a duty upon every believer who believes in Imamat from Allah Almighty. So we invite you to come to Karbala and come to visit your Imam and perform ziyarah. Unfortunately, not everyone can come visit Imam Hussein. Not everyone has the ability or opportunity to visit regularly, and that's why Morning Barakah is giving you the opportunity to perform ziyarah from your very homes. We want you to send in your du'as and names of your loved ones so we can recite the ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam on their behalf. Maybe you have a loved one whose name you want to put forward, a marhum who would benefit, or maybe you miss Karbala and yearn to see Imam Hussein, peace and blessings be upon him. Why not send a small message or a dua for us to read here in the holy city of Karbala? Whoever's name you put, whatever dua or small message you have, the Morning Barakah team will pass it on to our team here in Karbala, and we will recite the ziyarah, read the message, and broadcast it on Imam Hussein TV3. Send in your names, du'as, and small messages to Morning Barakah at @imamhussein.tv, or messages or leave a comment on any of our social media platforms. We look forward to hearing from you, and may Allah and the Ahlul Bayt accept all of our a'mal and our ziyarah, inshallah.
Yes, welcome back, and to kickstart today's episode of Morning Barakah, we're going to be enlightened by the recitation of the Holy Quran, and as ever, we're going to be joined by Mustafa Al-Ali. Mustafa, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And for the last time, Mustafa, of this whole series, we're going to be really enjoying your recitations, your voice as well, and you're going to be reciting verses 53 to 55 of Al-Imran. So for the very last time for you, over to you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا آمنا بما أنزلت واتبعنا الرسول فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين. ومكروا ومكر الله والله خير الماكرين. إذ قال الله يا عيسى إني متوفيك ورافعك إلي ومطهرك من الذين كفروا وجاعل الذين اتبعوك فوق الذين كفروا إلى يوم القيامة. ثم إلي مرجعكم فأحكم بينكم فيما كنتم فيه تختلفون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Many thanks once again to Mustafa Ali for another tremendous and beautiful recitation of the Holy Quran. He was focusing on Surah Al Imran, verses 53 to 55 for the benefit of the viewers. This part of the show, we are really dissecting the supplications, the du'as, the ziyaras within the Shia literature, that we can really focus on and shed some light on some interesting facts that you probably didn't know about. And here to really disseminate his knowledge, we very much enjoyed his time or our time with him. I'm sure me and Zara can collaborate on this. Ibrahim Al-Ansari, Assalamu alaikum. Ibrahim.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, how about yourselves?
I'm
Good
doing well.
morning.
Morning.
Wakey.
Yeah.
Getting there.
Yeah. Well, look, to start off our day, I think it'll be nice to focus on Imam al-Mahdi, Ajallahu ta'ala faraju sharif. It being, of course, as you know, Zara, it's the month of Sha'ban, and within Sha'ban there are many births, and so today we're going to be particularly focusing on Imam Mahdi, alayhi salam. Zara, tell me, what's the plan for today?
The plan is that we are going to hand over to Brother Ibrahim, and you've chosen a ziyarah.
Is it ziyarah or is it dua?
I've chosen a dua.
Oh, okay.
In fact.
Okay. What dua is it from?
This is from the dua of the half of Sha'ban.
Oh, brilliant. So
So
there's
mid-Sha'ban.
a specific dua from
Yes.
mid-Sha'ban. Okay.
So
I wanted to actually speak about this, but we'll get on after.
No, sure, go on.
So I think I mentioned in the previous episode that there are a lot of ziyaras or even du'as for specific occasions. Like people know Ziyarat Ashura more or less off by heart because they recite it every Ashura. But then there's a Ziyarat Ashura for a specific event. Or maybe if it's even Ziyarat Imam al-Hussein for a specific event. So for example, Ziyarat Imam al-Hussein on the day of Arafah, Ziyarat Imam al-Hussein on the day of Eid, Ziyarat Imam al-Hussein on the day of even mid-Sha'ban, for example.
Yep.
So when it comes to that, are there differences between each ziyarah, the words even? And how comes, for example, there are different ziyarahs for different days? What's going on there?
Now, first of all, in terms of different words, yes, there definitely are different words. Some of which are even narrated by different imams. So, for example, the ziyarah of Imam Hussein on the day of Sha'ban, on mid Sha'ban, is not the same narrator as the one of Ashura. It's not the same narrator as etc. etc. Some have similar narrators. Now, so the words do differ. The narrators as an imam differ as well, dependent on the specific ziyarah. However, in essence, they are all salutations towards Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Therefore, having a ziyarah on mid-Sha'ban does not mean that this one is right and the ziyarah of Imam Hussein on the day of Arafah is wrong.
Of course, yeah.
In fact, it is a way of making sure that we remember Imam al-Hussein, for example, on every single one of these occasions. So mid-Sha'ban is a great day. We must remember Imam Hussein in it. The day of Arafah is a great day. We must remember Imam Hussein in it. And we realize that there's always some sort of link between Imam Hussein and Imam al-Mahdi. There's a direct link between the two. Mid-Sha'ban is the day of the birth of Imam Mahdi. There's a ziyarah for Imam Hussein. The day of Arafah, it is narrated from Imam Mahdi. From Imam Mahdi,
Brilliant.
He talks about his grandfather Imam Hussein. And you will realize that from Imam al-Mahdi, there is always a special connection between him and between his grandfather, Imam al-Hussein alayhi wasalam, more than any other Imam, even more than Imam Ali. There's always a direct relation between him and Imam Hussein. And in fact, in terms of revenge, he is called to take revenge for Imam al-Hussein alayhi wasalam. Not for Imam Ali, not for Fatima al-Zahra. Of course, he will take for all of them as well. And in fact, the narrations even tell us that he will go after their killers one by one. But in terms of Imam al-Hussein alayhi wasalam, there's direct link. It is also shown that this is also shown through the narrations, where after Imam al-Mahdi appears in the city of Mecca, his destination after is the land of Karbala. And I know this is a day, like these days are days of joy and everything, but to mention just briefly, on that day he will enter the shrine. And some narrations even suggest that he will pick up Abdullah al-Radi' to say, what did this young infant do to deserve this?
I don't think you can differentiate, can you, the tragedy they went through, that even your heart will ever be at peace, that even in moments of their happiness, like we're saying, it's the birthdays, it's a beautiful mercy from Allah that we have them, but what they went through, you can't.
Definitely. Which is why Imam al-Hussein alayhi wasalam, when he was first born, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam wept and cried. Why are you crying? Because my ummah is going to slaughter him. Imam Mahdi, he says, لَأَبْكِيَنَّ عَلَيْكَ بَدَلَ الدُّمُوعِ دَمًا, I will cry for you instead of tears, blood. And he says, لَأَنْدُبَنَّكَ صَبَاحًا وَمَسَاءً, I will cry for you and I will weep for you and I will call out for you day and night. Now my question is, Imam Mahdi, when you say day and night, does that not mean then every single day, even the birth anniversaries of them? Because there's always a link towards them.
But when you love something, someone said a very off-the-cuff comment that you Shias, you mourn for most of the year. And although that's amusing, for them, but for me, it's thinking, well, when you love someone, you wouldn't forget their pain. You just can't. And you can't say, well, I'm just going to be there for the good times. It's everything encompassing. And if the bad, as in the testing times are so intense, we can't forget as their followers. We
Definitely.
mustn't.
Even there's a specific scholar, let's leave names aside, he gets up on the pulpit on the day of Ghadir, Eid Allah al-Akbar, the greatest Eid. He gets up on the pulpit and he starts reciting Na'i. Everyone's going crazy. What are you doing? Eid Allah al-Akbar, you're reciting Na'i. We're here to clap, enjoy ourselves. Remember Amir al-Mu'mineen, remember the virtues of Rasulullah. You're reciting Na'i. He says, do you not know that this is the day that the inqilab started?
Yeah, this is the start.
This is the start to the oppression. When they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen and said, Bakhin laka ya Ali, congratulations O Ali, this is the day that they actually told Amir al-Mu'mineen, we will come after you.
Yeah. Well, we can focus on all
Yeah,
that.
of course.
Our time is
Yes.
limited with you, so I'd love to focus on the actual du'a as well. You said this is the du'a of Imam al-Mahdi, or
Yeah.
what was the?
Yeah, so you talked to Imam Mahdi, and in it, the narrator goes to perform salawat on the khatim of the Imams. Here, when it's talking about khatim, it's not talking about the Prophet, it's talking about the khatim of the Imams. Imam Mahdi plays a similar role to the Prophet,
Yeah.
where the Prophet takes all these messages and brings them together.
Yeah.
Imam al-Mahdi brings not only the messages of the Imams, no, the messages of the Prophets
Prophets as
and the
well.
Imams, and this is where he comes, which is why the narration state that even the believing Christians, those who have purity in their hearts, and the Jewish people, they will actually follow Imam Mahdi. And which is why Prophet Isa, Jesus alayhi wa ala nabina wa alihi wa salam, will actually pray behind the Imam. So it proves that his status is even higher than the Prophets. Because by no means in the true way of Jama'ah does a person who has a less status in terms of knowledge and in terms of just general status in terms of the religion, pray in front. It's always the one who is of greater knowledge, who is of better recitation, who is usually they go after a person who is Hashimi as well. Imam Mahdi has all of these attributes.
Beautiful. So this dua, would you like to recite it?
Yeah.
So did you have a question?
No.
Okay. So
اللهم فصل على خاتمهم وقائمهم المستور عن عوالمهم اللهم وادرك بنا أيامه وظهوره وقيامه واجعلنا من أنصاره واقرن ثأرنا بثأره واكتبنا في أعوانه وخلصائه وأحينا في دولته ناعمين وبصحبته غانمين وبحقه قائمين ومن السوء سالمين يا أرحم الراحمين.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So you mentioned this is the du'a of Imam Mahdi.
Yeah.
Mid
Now-
Sha'ban.
Mid Sha'ban.
Tell me.
This, when you look at the translation, just to look at what it includes. First of all, you send the blessings on the representative and the seal of the Imams, unseeable towards the people. Make his days and his time, allow us to see it. Idrik, when you tadrik something, it is for you to live it, for you to see it, for you to witness it. Allow us to witness his days and his presence, reappearance. And qiyamih, here the qiyam is talking about his uprising. وَجْعَلْنَا مِنْ أَنصَارِهِ. And this is a very important dua. Allow us to be of those who support him, those who lead after him. وَأَقْرِنْ ثَأَرَنَا بِثَأْرِهِ وَاكْتُبْنَا فِي عَوَانِهِ وَخُلَصَائِهِ. Allow our names to be of his supporters and his sincere friends. وَأَحْيِنَا فِي دَوْلَتِهِ نَاعِمِينَ. Allow us to live in his the dawla here. When it's talking about dawla, yes, it translates to a country, but it is talking about the Islamic Republic, let's say. The Islamic Republic isn't just a country, And the Islamic Republic of Imam Mahdi isn't just a few countries. No, it will be the whole world. So for example, we have a narration where when it comes to the issue of Fedek, one of the tyrants comes to one of the Imams, I believe it is either the 6th or the 7th Imam. And he comes to him and he says to him, "Come, let me give you Fedek back." The Imam looks at him and he says, "You will never be able to do so." He says to him, "Come and I will do it." He's the tyrant of the time, he's wealthy, he's able to do anything as he claims. "Come and I will be able to do it." He looked at the map, he said, "You will never be able to do it." He said, "Just pin it for me, tell me where it is." The Imam took the map and he pinned the edges of Fedek. Fedek, which was what? A garden given by the Prophet to Fatima al-Zahra. And he gives it back to the tyrant of the time. He looks at it and he says, "What is this?" He says, "You asked me to pin it and this is Fedek." It was the whole Islamic
SubhanAllah.
Republic, let's call it. Every single place, city, inch that the Muslims were in charge of was Fedek. And the whole world will be Fedek. By the uprising of Imam Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam. So we ask for us to be of those who can live within this country.
And that's a perfect ending.
That's very metaphorical, isn't it, Fadek's sort of, in comparison to what it's actually meaning, what he meant by that. It's amazing.
And
Are we at the end?
Yeah, we have reached the end, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Ibrahim mentioned, to be amongst the followers, the soldiers, the companions of Imam Mahdi Ajalallahu ta'ala Farja Sharif when that time comes.
May he bless us with his
and bless us with his
sight and
his presence.
Yeah.
On that note, Ibrahim, thank you so much for your time
Jazakumullah
once
khair,
again.
thank you very much.
After the break, dear viewers, Zara will be going on another journey with Brother Bilal on the specialist segment. So stay tuned for a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Imam Hussein Media Group is a virtual university that works on a global scale to spread the true message of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, peace and blessings be upon them. Imam Hussein TV was established 10 years ago in the city of Isfahan, Iran. We work to cover all aspects of religion, Islamic jurisprudence, politics, philosophy and many more, and aim to bring the public's attention to the righteous Islamic sect, Shia Islam. Our ultimate goal as a media group is to convey the interpretations of the Holy Quran as well as the traditions and knowledge of the Holy Prophet and his progeny, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon them. Our objectives are to protect and safeguard the Shia youth from the destructive impact of immoral ideologies, standing up against injustice by documenting the oppression of Shia across the globe, as well as encouraging peace and unity amongst the Muslims. To reach our aims and serve the Muslim Ummah, we require a budget that would cover all the expenses for our productions, allowing us to work on different projects. Imam Hussein Media Group is a crowd-funded project. We have no sales nor do we charge for our services. We solely rely on monthly payments, financial contributions, donations, religious alms and generous gifts. The expenses of each production varies depending on the type of project and the style of filming. There are many elements to a production that requires time and capital. The producer must analyze the costs of the venue hire, equipment, transport, feature fees, set design, staff support and further additional costs. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, narrated, "The best of people is he from whom people benefit." It is up to you to help the Muslim Ummah come together and help guide the youth in remaining on the correct path of Islam. To take part in this global conquest and to spread the message of Imam Hussein, peace and blessings be upon him, please visit www.imamhussein3.tv or give us a call on +44 0203 515 0199. You can also contact us via WhatsApp, Telegram, SMS, or even email us on donate@imamhussein.tv. Let's work together hand in hand to elevate the faith of our Shia youth today.
Welcome back, dear viewers. We just had a discussion with Brother Ibrahim Ansari, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're ready for our next topic, which is going to probably be a bit contentious, but let's see how far we get. So I'd like to welcome Brother Bilal Ali. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
looking forward to contentiousness.
So the discussion today is about prejudice and the psychology behind it. So a famous hadith that we have, which I'll quickly read out for the benefit of our viewers. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that the white person has no superiority to the black person and the Arab has no superiority to the non-Arab and vice versa, except in times of piety. Now, this hadith it goes around, so
It's been heard.
yeah,
It's
we
been said and
hear
it's been
it,
heard, yeah.
and
But do we
over and
act
ag-
upon that?
Do we act upon it?
Yeah.
And over and again, we hear of racist incidents. We obviously live in a country where we are minorities, and we are perhaps more obvious to it. We're perhaps more prone to it. So really, I want to go behind. That's just one aspect of. We're talking about the Arab, non-Arab, black, white. But what is the psychology behind prejudice? Are we born to have these traits within us, or is it something that we develop through school, or how is it embedding within us as by the time we're adults?
Well, before we can even discuss it, we have to even know what we're talking about. What do we mean? Because prejudice, for example, or even racial prejudice or ethnocentricity or prejudice based on gender bias, these things need to be described and defined. But I think that when we're talking about discrimination, racial or otherwise, they happen on a continuum as opposed to saying that prejudice either exists or it doesn't, a person's race or not. It's more or less like what end of the continuum is a particular disagreeable behavior on. So it might start out with, on one end, the lower end,
Yeah.
of simply people maybe making prejudicial jokes indoors in safe spaces where people from the out group are not present. So just basically racist or prejudice talk. Jokes,
And it's very flippant.
yeah,
Yeah.
jokes, derogatory kind of comments. I think this is where the socialization process happens. So children from that in group hear adults talking like this behind closed doors, and then they kind of internalize these attitudes. Another manifestation would be where we don't attack anybody physically, verbally, psychologically, but we just avoid groups. We don't mix with them. We don't
Yeah.
say hello. We don't really make eye contact or interact. We avoid people. Then the next level is like discrimination, where it may affect a person's employment. It may affect a person's housing, a person's access to education, their public life in the public sphere. They affect their civil rights, human rights. And then you go on to things like, racial abuse, violent attacks. And in the worst cases, you have things we call like genocide and ethnic cleansing, as we've seen. And it can happen to people of color or quote unquote white people. So with the Bosnian Serbs, Croats, we had ethnic cleansing of white Muslims.
But something that always interests me is so in the United Kingdom, an obvious prejudice is colour.
Yeah.
But what about the ones that are not? I always think, well, even if people don't have an issue with colour. So I recently went to a conference for Black and ethnic minorities in the public sector where I work, and it was, they're all senior managers, and they were all saying how at some point there's a lot of negativity in that room that I sensed. And from bad experiences, and that was unfortunate to witness. But there were women, so I feel that sometimes as a woman that wears hijab in London or around, it can be difficult now in the climate that we're in.
For sure.
Alhamdulillah, I haven't had, I have to say not many experiences at all compared to somehow you hear some people. But I'd always say, okay, Islam is a very blatant, it's in the news, it's a political issue at the moment. But then people of colour, they also have this prejudice faced towards them. It doesn't matter, even if I was to take my hijab off, I'd probably, for some reason, be the wrong colour, be the wrong, this, that. There's always something, isn't there?
Yeah.
And when you look at, as I mentioned, the United Kingdom, you've got the Northerners hating the Southerners, or the Southerners hating the Northerners. You've got the Scots not really liking the English. There's always something that someone doesn't like. And what is that indicating then?
Well, you see, what happens is that there are psychological components to prejudice, and as I said, the argument is that they are things that are nurtured. It's things that we're learned. It's things that people are taught specifically, we can see that with the press, we can see the way that the press enforces stereotypes.
Yeah.
We can say the way that the movie industry, Hollywood, for example, we've seen it in the past, how Germans were portrayed because it was after the war. It used to be the Germans and the Japs that were enemies. During the Cold War, we saw how Hollywood portrayed Russian people.
Yeah.
We've seen, even if you go further back, how they used to portray African American
It's
people.
always the other then, is
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
So mainstream dominant white American
Yeah.
site would portray African American people in some terribly derogatory ways.
Yeah.
And now in the 21st century and post, the Cold War, the Berlin Wall, I mean the wall coming down, the Muslim is the bad guy. So
9/11,
yes,
isn't
so
it?
now we
Yeah.
got the kind of like 9/11 and the extreme Muslim out to kind of conquer the world and put everybody in a veil and under Sharia by compulsion.
Yeah.
This is the new bogeyman. So it's all, like the media do play a role, but people are taught these ideas. They're really reinforced. They're taught in the family. They're reinforced by the society. And sometimes when people are sanctioned for acting outside of the group. So maybe a country like Britain, you'd have heard years ago, God forbid this should kind of happen in the 21st century, but I know, for example, my parents came from South America, from the Caribbean in the 60s, and it wasn't unusual if a black person from the Caribbean had met a white English person and wanted to, they found them, affection of their eyes or whatever, they decided to become a couple that, people like that had been attacked, beaten up, by a group. Even like beaten up by, say, for example, English white people, even the woman get assaulted. So she was sanctioned for loving who she wanted to love. So this kind of thing happens, but it's taught. This is learned. This is learned behavior. And there's psychological theories. There's one theory, which is the authoritarian personality theory in psychology. And it talks about people who usually receive a kind of authoritarian parenting style, and it's quite a punitive style.
Right.
Less love, less affection, and more about following rules. And people like this develop a resentment towards their parents, and maybe don't project that resentment, but they displace that resentment, that anger out. They need somebody a group to project those feelings onto. They tend to see the world split between us and them, in group, out group. Tend to be very ethnocentric, sometimes anti-Semitic, sometimes sexist as well. But you'll find people like that foster certain racial attitude, and like racist, should I say, not racial, racist attitude. It's quite common. It's just a personality construct.
I've always so you're saying it's personality construct, because I always do wonder when you have racist people that get, perhaps, all the levels you spoke about, where, it's in the house, it comes into society, maybe kids learn it from school, go on to work environment, it becomes an acceptable form of societal values. So, and then, I'm presuming that not a lot of people get to the point where they want to actually go and harm somebody because of their colour or whatever. But is it something, so for instance, if somebody goes that extreme level and attacks somebody, gets sentenced, goes to jail, is jail the best way to sort of deal with people like that? Or should they be getting...
There's just levels. There's levels to dealing with them. Because one, we need to protect the public.
Yeah.
So the person being removed from society while they present a risk, they're not just sent to jail to be punished, but they're sent to jail to almost give time to protect society. That's what sometimes people say prison doesn't work. No, when you're locked behind those doors, society's safe while you present a risk. It's not all about punishment.
Yeah.
They also need to be punished. How that punishment takes place, that could be in part by being behind doors, or it could be that you even serve part of your sentence in the community, but you need to adhere to certain rules, or you'll be sent back to prison. So there should be like a penalty if you don't comply with following certain rules.
Yeah.
And also, being part of your release should be that you need to finish certain offender management programs, just like a sex offender or other kinds of crimes where you have to prove I'm no longer a threat. I've thought about the things I've done, I've reflected, how could I have dealt with it differently, challenge my ideas, my negative ideas, and pass like exams or coursework or whatever to show I'm safe, you can release me. I'm not just standing in front of a board of people saying, I feel really sorry for what I've done and holding my head down. No, prove it.
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because I never will forget that Stephen Lawrence murder that happened in London. And, his killers and the way that they, you know, the ones that I think when they're arrested, they,
Yeah.
you know, I can't remember, just going back years ago, but the way they smirked in court, and you often see that, and it's quite distressing and, you know, disturbing to see people having committed a murder, taking a young person's life, and then smirking and just not feeling any remorse. You think, what will actually cure this person's diseased brain? They're spiritually sick, and I don't know, you know, in terms of the laws and what the prisons actually, what programs are available to these people. But I mean, perhaps you know better in terms of like what actually happens to these people. Are they? Do you see people in your own line of work that perhaps they were something and had prejudice, and then they overcome, and then they learn not to be?
Yeah, well, even just in terms of just a crime, they sometimes have a program called a restorative justice program, which is where people actually sometimes come into contact with either the victims or families of the
Right,
victims,
okay.
so they can really, you know, help that consider on more of a human level.
Yes.
The consequences of their action. Do you really understand what you've done?
Yeah.
So yes, that does take place. But I wanted to touch on another aspect of racial or racist behavior. Sometimes there's something called a real conflict theory, and sometimes prejudice and racism is fostered. This is where I think politics plays a role, is because there is when there's a limitation of resources, then groups can become prejudice rise to the top. So when the economy in this country, for example, is doing good, we could be pro-multicultural. We can have Diwali, we can have Ramadan, we
Yeah.
can have the Notting Hill Carnival, we can celebrate diversity. But then when Brexit starts to get tight, or when the bankers crash the market, we start to say, we're going to get the politicians who have messed up, and they need a whipping boy, they need to hide. The politicians will come out in front of the people, knowing they messed up, and say, we're going to get tough with immigration.
Yeah.
We want people to integrate. We want to be tough on crime.
Yeah.
And they start to use code words, and it's a bit of a sleight of hands to get the mainstream populace who have been duped, yeah, to help them to not really focus on and criticize the government,
Yeah.
and start to focus on, it's the Muslims, it's the
Yeah.
brown people, it's the black people, it's, you know, and it's everybody else apart from the government who pull the levers of
Well,
strings.
this whole Windrush scandal that happened, you know, what was that all about?
Decoys. These
Yeah,
are
it
these are smoke
is,
screen and
yeah,
decoys. So,
yeah.
but it happens when the when there's limitation of resources. It happened in America, for example. They've done research and said when there was, like, in the past, you know, like maybe 100 years ago or there about 8 years ago, there used to be lynchings in America. African Americans men were often lynched, and lynchings and violence would increase. In depression, it correlated the statistics.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a sharp the economy declined, and the poverty was on the
Yeah.
poverty was rising, and lynchings rose, and then the market and work started to open up, and then the lynchings didn't stop, but they would follow a pattern. So they say that's down to, like, what they call real conflict theory. People become, when there's less, you know, resources around, people can become quite vicious.
So we focused a lot about social aspects, and as I said, we're in a country where we are the minority, and we focus on the white person being racist. Do you think we're inherently all racist?
I don't think we're all inherently racist, but I think that there is something about groups, ethnic, linguistic groups, cultural groups, whatever they may be, kind of like being familiar. You know, I come from a particular culture, a particular heritage. I find maybe speaking to somebody or meeting somebody, like, we may have something in common. Food I might be used to, certain particular things I just understand. So it's kind of natural. I think that people have an inclination. I think that where it becomes, for Muslims, quite embarrassing is when people can't go beyond that. When
Yeah.
they're sort of limited to their own,
Yeah.
they literally, like, one-dimensional. And they become tribal or ethnocentric, where everything's about my group. We're at the center of the whole universe, and kind of nobody else exists. Or the real film is about my group, and everybody else are just walk-ons and supporting actors
it's
in
quite-
the movie of my clan or my tribe.
It's
Like,
interesting because I think
weird.
because we're all immigrants into this country, into this society, and we've all kind of grouped into our own little areas, and
Yeah.
whether it's North London, South London, wherever around the UK, around the world, into, you know, and in that comfort zone. So when somebody from outside comes, it's like, well, you know, I don't speak the same language. It could happen to any of us. It doesn't happen, you know, necessarily happen to just a white reaver or a black reaver. It will happen, you know, if I go into a certain community that's not mine. that, you know, so it's something that's, and again, the hadith I started off with is exactly that behavior we're not supposed to have, and yet we are very guilty of it, aren't we? That we don't welcome people in because, oh, you're a bit different and I don't like the look of you, or I don't feel
and that's we know as Muslims that is not the adab of the Prophet ﷺ and the Ahlul Bayt. That's not their behavior.
No, absolutely.
They were quite diverse in terms of, for example, the people they married.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's the example. So the other behavior, we know that's from people's culture, and the culture culture is cool, but it can't contradict or go against the Quran or the Ahlul Bayt.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something for us to reflect. And I think that Britain is a really interesting place. It has racism, but at the same time, one thing you have to admit, Britain has mechanisms to address many issues. We have laws and policies to address our grievances.
Definitely with the way forward. We've run out of time, otherwise we could have probably delved into that subject a bit more. Thank you so much. Hope you have a blessed morning ahead of you. And that's all for now for this segment. And we are now going to join Sister Sana and Sister Fahima in the kitchen.
نه قوت در کمر دارم ابوالفضل علم دارم.
The hadith is sharif Ma'soom Imam al-Sajjad, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given my uncle Abbas a maqam such that on the day of judgment all the shuhada and the siddiqeen will wish they had the maqam of Abul Fadil. And the Imam did not leave an exception for anyone within the kawn. The exception that we know is Ahlul Bayt through Ahkam Aqli.
Thank you, Zahra. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Morning Barakah, Health and Nutrition segment. With myself here is Sana. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Fahima.
So what have you got for us today? I'm really excited.
So we're going to make a very simple lentil soup.
Oh, you know I love soups.
It's really great, especially for the weather now. You know, it's
Absolutely.
the winter season, so you know it's good to kind of have something to keep us warm during the cold
We
season.
normally have lentil soup traditionally in Ramadan.
Yes.
But we can actually add that to the winter time, and obviously it will help us because lentils, as we mentioned before, has a lot of benefits in there. It helps us, you know, strengthen ourselves, and you know our bodies need that extra sort of like in this weather.
Exactly.
It needs that extra boost.
Definitely.
So can you talk us through what you have today?
Yeah, so I have some red split pea lentils, and I have an onion, pepper, turmeric, and I have some vegetable seasoning. This is, I think it's a universal one, but you can also get a Vegeta, which is also just a different brand.
It's very different to what I normally know lentil soup to be made.
It is, yeah. It's very simple. I've made it my
basic,
own version. I learned lentil soup through my in-laws. It's typically made
yes,
by some Iraqis. Yeah, exactly. But I kind of made it my own way. Sometimes I'm not too fussed to put too many things in there.
Yeah.
I just want something quick. That will take maybe, I don't know, 30 to 40 minutes just to get it done. So it's about kind of being practical with my time.
Also for this particular soup, we use red lentils, and there's many types of lentils, right?
Exactly.
And you can mix them as well when you're cooking.
You can, yeah. You can mix them with other lentils and even with beans. So, you know, even with some vegetables. So if you want to put some carrots in there or peppers, it will really add to the soup. So just experiment with different type of vegetables with the soup, and it will kind of make it something simple into something, you know, a lot greater and nicer as well. But this version is it's simple for the viewers, and they can kind of add their own touch into it.
So how do we start with this then?
So basically what I do is, let's just grab a big spoon. It's basically just putting everything into one dish.
It's much simpler than separate sort of cooking.
Exactly.
Okay.
2 big spoons, which is about a cup of the lentils.
The lentils, okay.
Exactly.
And how many people do you think that would sort of
So this
feed?
one we're making quite simple, so I think it will be probably about 2 bowls.
Okay.
This. And if you want to obviously make more, just double it. But what you'll find is with lentils, they will expand.
Yes,
so
of course.
what you think is a little bit will end up being quite a
And
lot.
you do have to water it down a lot because
Exactly.
of the thickness.
Exactly.
So that also adds to the, you know, the
Yeah,
actual-
and depending on what you like, whether you like your soup to be thick or
That's
or
true.
thinner, you can kind of add as much water as you want
That's
according
true.
to what you prefer.
Of course.
And when you do add vegetables in there as well, you don't need as much lentils. So if you're going to fill it with other
true.
vegetables,
Yes.
you don't need to think about that. Another thing that you could add onto this as well is they use traditionally is like a kubba, which is a stuffed dumpling.
Dumpling, yeah.
That also adds to the flavour, and it's filled with meat and things like that, so it can add a difference to taste to the actual soup.
The other thing I know that's added to it is the vermicelli in Sharia that is
Yes,
mentioned, or the
very true.
tamarhin, because it gives that sort of sourish taste, and some people even like to add lemon to it, because that's how I traditionally make it as well,
Yeah.
in that sort of format. And the Sharia, the vermicelli, makes it a lot thicker as well, so use a very small amount because it does actually add to the thickness.
Exactly. So for this, I would add probably about a teaspoon.
A teaspoon, exactly.
Because you
Yeah,
don't
the
want it to
shred-
actually
yeah,
just be
overtake in
all
power.
Sharia.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's another thing you can also add. Sometimes I do add in there as well bones. So I'll
Okay.
use lamb or even chicken
Well, I use
wings.
the just general chicken stock, add it
Yeah.
on there, so
You could
that's
do
the
that.
other version. But yeah, that is kind of like stock in a way.
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
and I prefer sometimes to kind of make my own stock at home. So if you have extra kind
Leftover,
of leftover meat in the freezer, or even extra chicken wings are really good with
Okay, I
it.
never used the chicken
So you can
wings,
use
yeah.
that, and also that doesn't take a lot of time as well.
Of course, of course.
So what I tend to do is, you only need about probably for this one.
Yeah, because of
about
the amount.
Exactly.
Okay, just while you're doing that, I'm just also wanting to question as to how do you keep healthy and safety in the kitchen?
So there's a few things that I do. So for example, as you just saw with the onion, I don't just cut it like that. I will.
That's what I normally do. Okay, so.
Because you don't want it to kind of slip.
Ah, okay.
So it's just something I kind of learned out of experience.
So you pierce it first.
Exactly, and as you can see with onions as well, another thing, it can make your eyes water
Of
a little bit.
course. What do you do to stop that? Because for me, it's terrible and it can last for ages.
I know that I've heard and I've read a few tips where if you leave a spoon in your mouth, so like if you leave it long ways like this,
Okay.
whilst you're cutting, you'll inhale through your nose, and that can actually help you.
I've never heard of that.
Yep. So do you know what? Go online and read things and see
'cause
different
obviously-
tips of
because
how.
obviously for certain people it would work differently, of course.
Exactly.
But that's one thing. I mean, we have to use onions in so many different dishes.
Exactly.
And that's the one thing I always find the worst to do with the cooking.
Yes.
Because you're just there crying, and it's not just the crying, the tears. It burns.
It burns, exactly.
It
yes.
really burns, especially the smaller ones and the really strong ones as well.
Exactly.
The other tip I heard is, the way you've just peeled it is not to actually cut the roots, because that's where the strongest sort of fumes come out of the actual
Of
the onion.
Yes.
And
yeah.
if you were to pierce the roots with the fork, hold it, and then just slice it
You see, so
across ways.
there's many different
and there's many
ways.
different ways, and that hopefully also doesn't allow so much tears and
Exactly,
all of
yeah.
that to come through.
Because you end up just crying whilst you're cooking.
Well,
isn't
that's
it?
what
So-
happens to me normally.
So as you see, right now it's just the lentils and the onions that's in there.
Oh, so you don't actually fry the onions before?
No,
Okay.
it's really, really simple and easy. And I mean, I do this quite regularly at home. Again, if you have children that are unwell, they're not eating anything,
Actually, that's a good substitute.
good way to make
Something
sure they're getting
inside.
something inside. It's almost like a fluid for them, so
Yep.
they don't feel they're eating
Absolutely.
anything.
'Cause it's got a lot of water as well.
Exactly. So for this one, you don't need salt, because this vegetable seasoning, it has salt.
Most seasoning do, so yes, be
Exactly.
careful when you're using that. Can I have a look at that?
Yes,
actually?
sure.
Is it like a spice?
So if you have a look,
Oh, it's like granules, grains.
yes.
Okay.
I'll just show you from here. If you have a
Okay,
look, it's
and
a
how much
mixture.
did you put in there?
So I put a teaspoon in there, and it's a mixture of chopped onions and garlic.
Just leave that out a little bit for the audience to see,
Yes.
maybe. Okay. Wow, it's lovely.
You have a
colour.
look, yeah. And it
Beautiful
also
colour.
gives a colour to the actual soup as well, which brings me on to the turmeric, which I also use not just for the health benefits, but for the actual colour of the
Of course,
soup.
it looks pretty. Of course.
So I would use the same, about a teaspoon in this.
Turmeric. again, we've discussed the benefits of that. So
Exactly.
to have that in most of our meals is really good for us.
It is indeed, yes. And
Especially in these winter months, we need something warm, we need something healthy, we need something to sort of fight those bacteria that are in there to keep us healthy and
exactly. And if
well.
if you've got a cold, put a bit extra pepper.
Okay.
Pepper's quite good because it will
Yes, of
help you
course.
kind of sweat out the cold and
That's
the flu,
true.
which is a good tip that you can use at home.
Okay, right.
So right now, it's got all the ingredients that is needed. Like I said, it's very simple.
Right.
And all I would do right now is fill it to the top with water.
Okay, so you need quite a lot of water. So let's just fill that so we can show
Exactly.
the audience.
So I would fill it until kind of just above the actual, the actual lentils and everything.
Wow, it does take a lot of water because I think even overnight when it settles, if you want to cook it for the next day, it actually thickens a lot.
It does, yeah. When you keep it in the fridge, what you'll find is it will become a lot thicker. And you may need to, when you reheat it, add a little bit of water, but sometimes just maybe reheating it kind of loosens it up and it allows it to become a lot thin. So if you have a look, it's
all the ingredients.
It doesn't look like much right now.
Of course, because when you cook it, then it's all going to come nicely together.
Exactly,
But it's
yes.
just to show how it might look and you know that this is the right way forward when preparing it.
And what you'll find is when you leave it on slow cook, the onions will completely, they'll soften and even dissolve. So they'll become...
So you don't whisk it, because I would normally whisk it?
No, I don't. If you would prefer to, you can do, but I don't feel that this needs it because I feel like when you've left it on a very low heat for a long period of time, it will slowly completely, dissolve and the onions will become very, very thin.
Okay.
So what I would do with that is, again, this would just go on the stove and you don't need to think about it.
And how long for something like that would take?
I would leave it on a very low heat for about half an hour.
Okay.
Half an hour to 40 minutes. Once I've done that, I would just go and check it and give it a little bit of a stir. Leave it again for another 10 minutes and then give it a little, and you will see, if you can see the lentils are still full like that, then you know that it still needs a bit more. You may need to add a little bit of water on it so you can assess it by having a look at it. If it becomes really stuck together and kind of gloopy and you can see that it's gone really thick, also add a bit of water into it as well.
Do you think when you're constantly adding the water that you might need to add a little bit more salt to it or does it matter? Yeah.
I always taste.
But do you feel generally that you do add?
I don't, because I feel when I put this actually has a lot of flavouring and seasoning.
Okay, but generally, when you're adding more water to your food, generally, do you feel that you need to add extra spice to it? Or not normally?
I don't think all the time, and I guess once you taste it, you can tell. It depends. If you've put very little seasoning, if you've put a lot of water, then I would say yes.
So it depends on the consistency.
Exactly, but if you've just added a little bit of water, like maybe a couple of tablespoons, it may not affect it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all done, and we have one that's already prepared for you.
Okay, brilliant.
To have a taste.
This is the fun part of the show, which I get to taste all this delicious food that you have prepared.
So let's just put this away. Okay.
Oh wow, the colour is brilliant, and you can see the bits of seasoning actually, even from that.
Exactly.
And the peppers.
Yes. And you can see the onions have actually dissolved.
You can't see them. And you haven't whisked it, and actually it's still very, a very good consistency.
Exactly. So I'm just going to...
Okay. Beautiful. No, that's beautiful.
And again, if this is too thick for you, that's fine.
Depending on each one's taste.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me just try.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. Delicious. I'm really surprised because I know I add so much more to it.
Yeah.
And I thought having it this simple will not taste that good.
Exactly.
Or it will feel like as if something's missing.
Yeah.
But absolutely not. I think that seasening really is. I'm going to take a note of that, by the way. I'm going to take a picture of that.
If you have a look, it's really, it's got everything in there. And I would definitely recommend, especially if you have children who don't want bits in their...
Amazing.
In their
and it is quite salt, actually. You can taste everything. And you don't even need what I use, like the lemon or the tamarind.
Exactly. You can drizzle lemon if you want to.
Of course.
Based on your taste. So,
I'm really surprised by that simplicity and the fact that it tastes so delicious without all the extras that I normally use.
Exactly, and also they're for vegetarians as well.
Of course,
they're still
it's
getting
perfect.
the taste of the same taste that you would get if you probably put a bit of meat stock in there.
Yeah.
So you
Oh,
really
wow.
can't taste the difference.
No, I love it. Thank you so much.
very
And that was
welcome.
again something that I can use at home
Yes.
without having to prepare and having extra ingredients.
Exactly.
And hopefully the audience have really benefited, and trust me, this really works with less ingredients for this particular soup that you're not normally used to having, with these sort of very fine ingredients, which is not that overpowering, and it's so delicious. Hopefully, inshallah, we will see you on the next episode of Morning Barakah, Health and Nutrition. Thank you, Sana, so much.
You're very welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Over to you, Zahra and Ali.
Sarah, we've now reached our favourite part of
Yep.
the segment with Sayyid Muhsin Shah. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
How are you
wa barakatuh.
today?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me, welcoming me on this show. It's a
Our pleasure.
We greatly
Thank you so
appreciate your
much.
time, and of
Thank
course,
you, thank
this is
you.
why I was saying we kind of like winding down towards this part of the segment, is because we can really talk about
Yeah.
tea in hand, talk about some of the
Indeed.
interesting subjects
Yep.
that Islam has has an opinion on.
Inshallah.
And we've covered mostly pets, fishing, halal, haram,
Real
mostly
estate.
fiqh, loans,
Business, yeah.
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we're discussing quite a contentious issue.
Yep. Contentious? Necessary.
Necessary.
So we have a question. We're going to go into the question
Okay.
because that will set
Inshallah.
that will set the scene. So there's a sister from Birmingham, called Noor, and she says that I am writing in regards to my friend Isabel. She always questions the rights and the involvement of Muslim women in society. She feels that Islamic law holds ladies back and doesn't allow them to reach their true potential. What can I say to her? Please help. And I would quickly just add, she says, although she mentions Islamic law, I don't know how much the law holds us back and how much the early history holds us back, as opposed to our culture. And
I've also put true potential as well. And there's
Yeah.
a bit of a question mark on that.
Yeah.
But we'll delve into that in a bit.
So how would you see the role of women? So we have historical figures. We're blessed in the school of Ahl Bayt to have very strong female role models.
Indeed.
So where is this sort of misconception?
I think there's a big misconception with culture.
Yeah.
Which-
SubhanAllah, I was literally writing that down right now.
I mean, it has a very, very, we could say like a system of patriarchy.
Yeah.
That we come from, and also there's a misogynistic element to it as well. Furthermore, when it comes to Islam, and it's really nice that Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi, Hafidhullah, the Marja, he discusses women's rights, and he discusses how in Islam, men and women are seen as equals. They're seen as counterparts. They're not two different species, even though the West say men are from Mars and then women are from Venus. They're not seen as that. Furthermore, women have the same rights as men. If not, they have more. And we can inshallah we'll dwell in
we'll
more.
go into that.
But let's look at what Isabel may be thinking. I'm assuming this is what Isabel thinks, that as a lady from the West, she probably thinks maybe women are not allowed to get educated.
That we're inferior
Women are not allowed to work possibly. Women are not allowed to.
I think inheritance is a big
teach.
question mark.
Inheritance as well. Why is it that women get less or it's a smaller piece of the
Voting.
cake,
Yeah.
and so forth. So inshallah we'll discuss and we'll go through.
Scholars, even being scholars.
Yeah, that as well.
So in terms of how people like Isabel, other people view Islam, to go back to the origin teachings, how does Quran How does Allah address male and females? Differently? One's inferior, or are we equals?
When it comes to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you see that even the prophets and then also the Ummah, they see us as creation. They don't see us as, this is a male, this is a female, or this is this gender, that gender. It's more of a universal, that you are all children of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way. You are all creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one is superior than the other. And we know this because we always talk about racism within Islam. We talk about the idea of Arabs and non-Arabs, and one is not superior over the other. But it's also is
gender.
Same with genders, and it's also the same.
So where are we coming down with the differences? Are you saying about racism? I mean, that's a different topic.
Yes.
But if we're talking about, I wonder how many Muslim women, we're talking about Isabel here, but do women feel inferior in their own, Islamic cultures? Do we feel equal to men?
It's a big shame if they do, because we have the greatest examples. We have ladies like Sayyidah Khadija, who was the richest woman in Arabia at that time, who inherited her father's business and excelled. And I even heard that when her name was mentioned, people would put their hands on their heads out of respect, because this was no ordinary lady. And then you got the likes of Sayyidah Fatima, who used to help the Prophet, who used to also, a revolutionary, you could say, when her land was usurped and she went out to go get her rights. And then we have Sayyidah Zainab, her daughter, who was the pillar, or you could say, of Karbala, because after Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he was butchered and martyred. It was Sayyidah Zainab who kind of kept everything together. And it was because of Sayyidah Zainab.
It was her propagation.
We remember Karbala today.
But do you think women in this day and age will be given that flexibility and freedom to be able to express themselves the way Sayyidah Zainab, Fatima Zahra and Khadija did?
We definitely hope so. Now, when it comes to fiqh, there are certain rules that are for women and they don't really concern men. And there are certain rules that concern men, don't concern women. And there are certain rules that maybe someone would assume that are a little biased towards males or a little biased towards females. But today's day and age, I don't think that any person should view Islam to say, to have an opinion that women are restricted from doing anything that a man can't do, or so that a man can do. For example, go out and work. Islam has given complete freedom for women to go out and work. Education, Islam has given not free education, but the right for women to go and educate themselves. Furthermore, in the Risala Amaliyah, there is a question in regards, can a woman actually get involved in politics and actually campaign and run for presidency or prime minister, a leading role? And Sayyid Sadiq Hafidhullah, what does he say? Yes, she can. She has every right to.
So where are we going wrong, if I'm saying? Because when we look at Islam is saying, I've asked you about the Quran, we know the role models exist, we know how Ahl Bayt treated their women. Where is it today that we are having this almost, this division between the genders, whereas we shouldn't be focusing, we have our own roles, God has given us, stipulated according to our genders, certainly like we don't have, it's not incumbent upon us to go for jihad.
I think the one thing that it is important as well to take into consideration is the haya of ladies, and also the parda, or I don't want to use the word segregation, but in a way the protection of women.
That's taken to an extreme level.
It is taken to an extreme level, but maybe extreme
but do we live in those societies? So I don't mean to
not here in the West. We've understood that. It is the worldview of the West that they don't look at women in that way. They look at women very, very differently. In the West, we see men and women working together and work colleagues, and they probably go out to lunch together and socialize after as a group, and things like that. I'm not actually condoning this and saying that go ahead and do it.
But it's their attitude.
As in their attitude and their worldview is very different to people of the Middle East and places where me and you come from. So I think that's what is different, and that's why they view it differently as well. But we do have a responsibility. I remember I was at an Imam Hussein conference, and there was a mixed gathering, and there were some women without hijab and things and so forth. And someone asked the Shaykh, is this allowed? Is this halal? And the Shaykh said, everything here is halal. I have not seen one thing that is haram. The reason we say these things in terms of having partitions or not to have mixed gatherings or not to look at women is that prevention is the best cure. We do not want you getting involved in creating a situation which will lead into haram.
See, but then this goes back to where women feel really, and I'm going to say annoyed that, you know, you segregate us to say, you know, there's situations we must avoid, whereas it will be the men that will be looking at the women. It won't be the women necessarily, you know, we're wearing a hijab, we're covering ourselves, and you're saying to us that, yes, we're going to segregate you because we can't lower our eyes. And that's a big criticism I've heard from my non-Muslim friends about, well, why are women required to cover? And it does go hand in hand, because men have a responsibility and women have a responsibility to, obviously we have to maintain our social hijab, our physical hijab. But then why are we having these divisions when we're in a society where we, you know, it's not just the non-Muslims that are working, we're all working, studying with the opposite gender, we have to conduct ourselves. So why are we segregated in our own centres? Why can we not look at each other as, you know, human beings that have to get along, that have to, you know, focus on initiatives for our children, for our future generations? Why are we having these?
I think this, to be honest with you, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense
You
at
don't
all.
think?
Like,
I think
sorry to again, because like women are allowed to go to university. They mix in
a lecture hall,
in a lecture hall. They often have to do projects with other
Opposite
and this
genders,
is
And probably
single
presentations
and
in
this
front
is
of.
single women
Yeah.
or young teenagers where at the height of, for example, corruption or whatever what they can lead into, right? And they have to do projects in university, and even the culture in university is very difficult to maintain that religious atmosphere, right? But whereas when going into a mosque, and a mosque is a religious institute, you're not going to imagine anything bad happening. Yet women are not only segregated, but they're put into another room with a TV. And then the men can enjoy the program
with space as well.
Space as well. So it's just that's what I'm saying. It just doesn't make sense.
I understand, and
I know culture has a lot to do with it, but does fiqh have anything to do with this? Is it, for example, haram for a woman to sit inside the hall where the man is there?
As far as I'm aware, because we wanted to do this in our centre, which is a Pakistani centre in West London. We wanted the women to come, because women were in a separate room, we wanted them to come join us in the main hall, and we put a barrier in between. We spoke to the sheikh. The sheikh said there is no issue, even without the barrier. You can do it without the barrier as long as the women are in full hijab. Okay. As long as the women are wearing full hijab, it is fine. There's no issue with it. And what we did was we still put the barrier up, just for precaution and safety measures. But Islamically speaking, there's no issue, but there is an issue when it comes to like mixed gatherings, as in having men and women sitting amongst each other. You know, if you have women on one side and men on one side, that's one thing. But having them, you know, together, there is a little issue there.
I mean, as a woman that's born and brought up in this country, and I hear comments from men from the East, for instance. So there was that murder of recently of a young backpacker, British girl got murdered in Australia, New Zealand, and somebody from the East, Middle East, on social media commented, well, she should have had a male guardian with her. And I thought, but do you know what life is like here? Not all of us have that, comfort of having a male guardian with us. So what are you going to stop women from actually going out into life and, living because she hasn't got a male guardian? We don't have those lives. Not all of us have that. So where do we go with people like that? And how are we going to stop women? Are we going to say, don't go and get an education, don't work? Because you need to have this male guardian. In an ideal society, perhaps women wouldn't have a problem with that.
Wouldn't it be a beautiful society where all the males are guardians of the women, and
it doesn't work. Yeah,
it doesn't
work like that.
Whatever she got. I mean, there was a time. I mean, me and yourself, we're from an area called Punjab, where in Punjab it was known that a girl would be everyone's daughter and everyone's sister, and everyone would look after that girl. It wasn't an issue it's someone else or this or that. Everyone looked out for everyone, and everyone had that akhlaq and worldview.
It's weird because most of this stuff comes from our own cultures.
Yeah.
Iraqi, Pakistani, whatever culture it is. It's back home in the East. This stuff happens, and the culture supersedes the religion, and it's so ironic because from Zaynab, all the way from Khadija to Fatima Zahra to Sayyidah Zainab, they spoke in public. Yeah. Can that be more of a a thorn?
The best one is Hadith Qissa. Is narrated by who? Jabir.
Yeah.
And who narrated it to Jabir? Who taught Jabir this hadith? Sayyidah Zahra, Sayyidah Fatima.
You know, we're coming towards the end, and I just think that there's a lot of work in our communities to do, because I think individually we all have our own ideas, but I think perhaps the direction and perhaps people in your situation, you know, in your position can guide us to sort of be a bit more open-minded within the, you know, what Allah has given us, the, you know, boundaries to maintain those. Indeed. But it's a responsibility from both genders, and I don't think the onus always needs to be on the woman, but there's a lot of work to be done with men. But not to say that, you know, women don't have their own, you know, things to change. We all do.
I think it's important to mention, especially for the question that you had regarding Isabel, that Islam is not a religion that is trying to, you know, suppress or stop women reaching their true potentials. Islam is a religion. Fiqh, from a fiqh point, from a perspective,
it's on their side, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on their side. We want our women to go educate themselves. We want our women to become professionals. We want our women to.
They are the
we want them to run the country.
Of your children.
We want them to be involved in parliament and in politics, and we want them to, you know, professors and influential people that will change the direction of humanity towards a better future. You know, we're not against this whatsoever. It's just there's a little cultural battle that we're probably fighting at the moment, I think, to allow women to actually take pole position.
But I think we have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, and I think the main thing is for all the sisters out there, actually, forget the Islamic perception from the non-Muslims. The main thing is for women out there to go and get educated as to what their actual rights are. Yeah. From internally, within domestically, and outside, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. Because that way, for example, I didn't know some of the things that you mentioned in terms of, I think you mentioned one of the previous episodes in terms of maternity, like she can charge
for breastfeeding.
breastfeeding. Yeah. That okay, some of them are not going to charge obviously because they feel like it's their duty, but it's their right. If we're talking about women's right today, it's their right to do so, and they have many more rights. All they need to do. There's a whole book out in there that mentions.
But when you have, that's all fine, I think, in theory. But when you have in a real life situation a woman who's in a home, possibly married to a man who's, I don't care. It's my house. It's my rules. You're not doing that. You're not. Your parents are sort of saying, well, no, sorry, in our family you don't get girls educated. You know, you're up against a mountain, and I think those changes. She may know her rights, but you know, at the end, it is a man's world, unfortunately. And I think that's where we need to be the leaders to show that actually Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't lead his ummah to be like this, and how we've got to this point today where the onus seems to be always on the woman or mostly on the woman, I shouldn't say always.
To cover up.
To be covering up, to be the ones that are obedient, to, you know. And there are the misconceptions have come from somewhere, and I think. Indeed. We need to, if it's wrong, we need to change those perceptions. But if it's something we do,
I think colonialism also played a big role in it. Where
that's a massive big topic. Yeah,
where these Westerners came with their, you know, their short tops and whatever, and they thought, oh, this is what the kuffar dress like. So,
but then they viewed us as being oppressed, whereas hijab is not an oppression. And again, that's a whole different debate. But unfortunately, I think we've run out of time.
We have.
Indeed.
We need a whole hour.
Yeah, we really do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Sayyid, you've been with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Not at all. We've enjoyed your discussions, and like I said, really winding down the episode, but ending on a high for the rest of the day to be great and prosperous. Inshallah.
Have a blessed day.
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
And on that note, we appreciate Sayyid's time, and from myself and Zara, we look forward to seeing you in the next episodes of Morning Barakah. Inshallah, your mornings are full of blessings, and we will see you soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.